Hello. We have in the past we have examined number of issues relating to the management and the organization. We have seen different functions of management. We have also seen organizational theories, organization and its subsystems, technology, people, process, structure. We have also seen what are the different aspects in the environment brings about pressure and create opportunities for the organization and organizational change dimensions. We have also seen organization development as a field of bringing about changes in the organization. Further, we also examine the different dimensions of the group and the group behavior, conflict management, and how to resolve conflicts at different levels. And we have also seen in the past lecture about the creativity and innovation. So let us continue our discussion on managing creativity and innovation. As we have seen, this is one of the important aspect of the success, and unless organizations focus on technology, focus on problem solving, focus on innovation, focus on bringing about the best of the people through creativity and managing creative individuals, we will not be able to achieve the success, we will not be able to compete in the global market space. Today, organizations are striving to bring this innovation at all levels. Japanese call this as Kaizen, or what they call it as the continuous improvement. It is not that we are talking about innovations, we are in the context of the great inventions, but we are talking about innovation as workplace improvements, workplace changes. Day in and day out, whatever we do, we need to do things better, we need to do a little faster, and we should show that yes, always something more can happen. I think this is an attitude, and this comes out of a kind of a culture of collaboration where people work together, people understand each other, people appreciate one another, and then see the possibilities of doing some new things. In that sense, one need to take this creativity and innovation together, and innovation and creativity has to be managed day in and day out, so that organization all the time continuously gives some new things to the marketplace, improved performance on a daily basis, and through that addresses the competition, addresses the opportunities, and then exploits whatever of the best of the people in the organization. So let us look at in this lecture what is that we will try and do. So at the end of this session you should have learned and understood the following concepts. We will focus on problem solving, how we can examine the given problem, and then how to look at the proposal, how to see the implications, and also in terms of the implementation. So the problem solving is one of the widely used technique. We will also look at brainstorming, we will also look at the lateral thinking, and finally we will also see the use of this literature review. I could have started with literature review, then we could have gone to the lateral thinking, or then I could have moved to the brainstorming, but none of these things are arranged in any order of merit or order of preference, but all of these are available alternatives, and these are not any exhaustive listing as well. These are only illustrative examples of how some of the standard methodologies can be used in the process of innovation, in the process of creativity, in the process of generating new thoughts, new actions in the organization. Let us look at the problem solving. There are many attempts to produce extremely what could be the best problem solving technique. Simplest of the thing is that you identify the problem, you generate the alternatives, then you choose the best of the alternative and then verify the solution and then agree upon an action plan. So often these take the form of a very short list of tasks that must be performed before the problem can be solved. So systematically one need to get into the definition and the view of the problem. But in all areas of human endeavor, the problem solving is the gateway to progress. So unless you focus on the right problems and focus on the specific methodologies, there is no way we can ensure and guarantee the success. So there have been many attempts to produce the reliable problem solving techniques and the methodologies, and there are many methods, and people have patented some of these methods. People think that's the only method, but what we are going to describe is some of the steps what one can follow in getting into the problem solving mode. So any good techniques will include the following steps: examination, the proposal, the implications, and the implementation. So let's look into the first step of this examination. So when you see this examination, one cannot start to solve a problem without being absolutely clear as to what is the problem. So what is the problem? Is it what? Is it organization? It is individual? Is it technology? Is it? So one need to see, and once you define the problem, then all the alternatives and choosing an alternative and also the implementation becomes more effective. If the problem is not well understood, then likely the solutions also will suffer. So that is where the clarity of thought and the application of rationality are the key to being accurate in identifying the real problem. So people talk about in a problem solving situation is what are the causes and what are the symptoms. A symptomatic analysis of the problem could be one, but also one can get into the causes, and people also use the word root cause analysis. So there are techniques you can go through. You can write a tree diagram, or you can write a fishbone kind of a thing. So these things will help to clarify what are the causes and what are the problems. So in problem solving, it is essential to see and get that and differentiate between the symptoms and the causes. Look at, for example, somebody comes or goes to the doctor and says that I have the headache. So the doctor can treat him at the symptoms level. So what he can do, he can give some painkillers, or he can ask, take some medicines. This is one method. Or he may also ask, okay, you come back after 2 days, and he may not give any real medicine, but he may also give something which is nothing to do with. I don't call it as a fake medicine, but you can give it something so that you can wait for 2 more days to see whether the symptoms are continuing. But if you see the causes, he will ask some questions, right? So did you eat too much yesterday? Did you sleep well? In which side did you sleep? What is your age? What is your history of this sleep, so that he can understand this headache? He can also see the blood pressure. He can also see, is there any history of this? Or do you get only headache as you get up from your bed? Or when you have to go for an examination, do you get this headache? Or when you see some people, do you get headache? So as you start seeing the same headache, which could be, once you start seeing the problem, then gets defined more clearly. So something may be age linked. Sometimes it is as soon as he sees some person, it could be the situation, or as he sees or faces some kind of an excitement. So the headache could be due to many reasons, and So the details of that is a kind of a cause effect. And once you identify that what could be the major reasons, and then the problem becomes much more clearer. And then taking views around that probably would help organizations do things better. Similarly, when you look at in the organization, there are absenteeism. So when absenteeism, then one need to see as you start probing why this absenteeism. Absenteeism itself could be treated as one level of the problem, but then when you start seeing no, absenteeism is happening not across the organization, but only in such departments where there are some continuous shift working. So when you start seeing continuous shift working, what is happening there? So one shift of people work, that is, they work for 8 days, but then 8 hours, and then when they continue for the next one, so if that other person is not there, they get premium wages. So that means they get overtime or they double the wages. So then you will see why some reasons of absenteeism in this particular group, because when somebody absents, the other person gets the double the wages. So then the next time when the other fellow is absent, this fellow gets the double the wages. So some understanding of that nature. So now you start seeing what is the kind of group working, what's going on here. So then you will get that kind of a pattern. Once you know the problem, absenteeism is not the problem, but the kind of incentives you have provided there, the premium rates you have provided, and the necessity of the task to continue the shift all through the 24 hours could provide that kind of an opportunity. And then you can break it through simple solutions. Once you know the problem, then you can provide an appropriate solution. So the problem solving demands that getting into the details, so that's where the kind of questions. Many of these questions have been tested out and seen very, very relevant. It could be asking these questions either in sequence or in a random manner, and when set of people address these things, then they may do a better job. So always ask these questions, look at the questions one by one, asking what is the problem. So end of the thing is that you may not accept, but still you are asking what is the problem. So asking 2-3 times. And the next question you can also ask, is it my problem or is it someone else's problem? And then can I solve it? And then one can also say, is it worth solving? Why should we be in a hurry to solve this? So do we pay anything for it? Are we wasting any resources around it? So if we can wait, then whether time will heal. So many of this, is it worth solving? And you can also see, is this the real problem or merely a symptom of a larger problem? So that means when you see the absenteeism, I think it is not that you may say, no, it's a problem of this particular region itself. So one of the managers described that the people coming late could be a kind of an attitude of what he called as an aram culture, where people are relaxing all the time in the morning. So they are very punctual, but every day they come late by 2 hours. So somebody comes at every day 2 hours, but very punctual because that particular time only he will come. So one can see what is then the problem is. So then one would have formed some kind of an attitude, yes, anyway I am staying late. So what is the problem if I go at any time? So that means the individual would have defined, look, I am working very hard and I am contributing my best. I am staying every day beyond the working hours. So the kind of attitude what the individual would have formed, what is the problem? What is the problem if I go at if the company is starting at 10 o'clock, why not at 12 o'clock? If it is starting at 9, why not at 11? Because the kind of attitudes. And then when you look at that attitudes, why this person, then you would say, no, I have to overstay every day because I have to attend some customer calls and this, and don't I have to travel so much and then this. So it is not only the attitude, but you will see that if the problem has that the individual spends about 2 hours of traveling, and by the time he reaches home it is pretty late in the night every day, and then coming back would take so much of effort. Then you also see, I think he is also working all these 7 days. So that means when you start seeing and exploring the problem, then you will, I think you would understand, I think what he is coming late itself is not a problem, and he has no attitudinal issue as well, but there are real issues is about the logistics and the problem of traveling after the working hours and then getting back to the work next day, and such things would give the complete perspectives of the problem. So then you can also ask this question, if this is an old problem, that means is this a kind of a recurring problem, and what is wrong with the previous solution? If you have settled this once and for all, is it coming back again and again? So that means you will see, are there any new workers, or is it a kind of every time when we introduce is a kind of an appraisal discussion these problems are coming? Is it true that only some particular time of the year this issue happens? So what are the last time, or what did we do, and why some things are happening again? So then you will also see, does it need an immediate solution or can it wait? So that means you will also know the magnitude of the problem. No, I think it is only a problem of few people, but even then solutions are being worked out, and let's see kind of a thing. So but then that gives an idea, no sir, it is extremely important, fair enough. So then it is likely to go away by itself. So is this the kind of a thing where it has cropped up because we are under pressure, but really that is not the problem. So can I risk ignoring it? So that means whether the color, content, character of the problem will change if I leave it to the chances. So does the problem have ethical dimensions? So that means very clearly you need to see whether somebody has violated any values. Does it provide a kind of a bad precedent? So you also try and see the dimension of this problem. What is it like? Does it involve some kind of a moral turpitude, or it is it has anything to do with the law? So that means you have to take some more factors into consideration. So what conditions must the solution satisfy? So that means, does it do good to the individual, or is it for the group, or is it for the organization? What is the solution methodology? And will the solution affect something that must remain unchanged? So that means, yes, you may have to provide solution, but we want that individual to continue in the organization. We do not want that individual to go. At the same time, you want to shout at the person, you want to correct, or you want to discipline, things like that. So you want to minimize set of consequences, or you do not want to alter set of the conditions. So the solution should have to meet with set of criteria of that this must be. So when you try and ask many of these questions, we have to see that we have to try and find the most important parts of the problem. So that means we have to categorize, we have to systematically analyze, and we have to be open minded about both the problem as well as its causes. So unless but if you think no, I do not agree with it, I do not think this individual has any issues at all, or you think no, he is a very happy person, he is very comfortable in the life. So making that kind of a judgment is not going to help. So the first step is just to make sure that you are defining the problem and not for thinking about solutions yet. So you are fully focused on the problem, you are fully focused on the different dimensions of the problem without ruling it out that this may not be or that should not be kind of a thing. So they avoid that kind of a language of should, but, etc. It is also the best is to focus on the specific aspects and be as specific as possible when thinking about the problem. To give you an example is that instead of saying I hate my job, right, it is a kind of very judgmental, but be more specific about what you don't like. Like maybe I don't like working in the third shift. The first shift is typically seen as from kind of a 6 to 3:30. The second shift is seen from 3 to 9, 9:30, and the third shift is seen from 9:30 to early morning, that is morning 6 o'clock. So there are many people don't like to work in the night shift. So try and make this as specific as possible. Then you also should not do the following. So things to avoid is immediately assuming that you know what the problem and also the solution is. So there are many people that think, okay, so the moment you say, no, I know this, we have seen these people, these are all scoundrels, the making that kind of a very extreme and judgmental view of the people. And then I also know how to set right these people. When people approach in that fashion, they can also commit very serious errors. So understanding why some problem and then also approaching with proper understanding is extremely important. Directly trying to solve the problem and before thinking about it. So without thinking, if somebody attempts, it is unlikely would lead to some kind of an improvement and better methodologies. So look for, whenever you think of the creativity and problem solving, that one should not be in a hurry, one should not be go for a quick fix kind of a solution, but a systematic analysis, systematic documentation, and then putting this into order of this cause and effect, and then evaluating the alternatives around this cause effect, understanding and really focusing on the causes, not on the symptoms, is an important discipline. And that is what the problem solving talks about as the first step. But then you move on to the second step, is good problem solving depends upon being able to identify the best solution to the real problem. So that means you have to come up with different alternatives. So having identified the problem, then you have to see where the solution could be. Solution could be in the subsystem level, solution could be at that same system level, or sometimes it could be at the next super system level. So the question is, where is that the focus should come? The focus could come in terms of helping the individuals to look at not only the problem, but also about the kind of alternatives available. Unfortunately, this approach is practically impossible for all, but the simplest of the problems. Sometimes it is very easy to look for the solutions, but one is not very clear to see what could be the best. So the problem solving depends upon being able to look at the alternatives available and also choosing that kind of a best of the alternatives. So the ideal method is what? To produce tons and tons of ideas about how to go about it. So it may look very irrational, some looks very superficial, some looks silly, so some may be repetitive, some may think obvious. So there could be many of these things will come when you are talking about the solutions. So but when you are talking about the lots of different ideas, so there is a kind of a divergence. I think people talk about this kind of a divergent thinking as the first step. So that means you are generating several of the ideas, and then you can do what is known as a convergent thinking, where you can look and combine set of solutions. So the question is that how do you look at the problem and also the generate alternatives, and while generating alternatives, the quantity is important. When we discuss about the brainstorming, also we will see this particular dimension. So often thinking of new ideas makes one rethink and improve old ideas. So as people are start seeing, and when you do this in a kind of a group, what people use the word group problem solving, one starts building on the other. So one starts using the thoughts of the other and then gives one better solution. So the process leads to a kind of an improvement in not only in the quantity but also on the quality. So as you start synergizing, as you start using that quantity into a kind of a combination of things, likely it will lead to a better quality of solutions to the problems. So in any case, one cannot know the best idea has been selected unless all possibilities are tried out. For sure that one has to try out, but it is only making an estimation. It is only making sure that all the aspects of the problem is covered, and then also you are coming up with the possible alternatives. In any technology improvements, in any service improvements, the people who understand the problem can sit together, they can write down all these details and identify what is the correct problem, and then start generating that required thoughts about how to deal with this problem. And when they do that, they can work on each other's thoughts, each other ideas to come up with some better solutions. But don't accept that better solution, but each time you see how more or what more can be done upon and improve upon. And this is another way of saying is the kind of an implications. So that means a proposal designed to solve a problem, and now you have to see of any complexity will also have some implications. That means you are trying to solve one problem, but you may also create two other problems to the organization. So in other words, people see motivation, and motivation is an important problem, and then when they start seeing the alternatives, they may generate many alternatives to this problem of motivation, but then understanding, analyzing, and finally they may come to that conclusion, no, we have to provide incentives. So unless you provide incentives, you cannot motivate. So that means money is defined as the motivator. So once you start seeing that, and then suddenly you will see the implication wise there is a cost implication. That means that how much of the salary you would give as a percentage of this incentive. So then you will also see whether such increase will affect the survival of the company, or do you still able to do better and increase your margins. So as you see that you have identified a problem, and then you have looked at various solutions, and then you have come to that solution of the incentive, but then this incentive has that there is a cost implication. Apart from the cost implication, okay, so tomorrow if you don't give incentives, people will not work. So that means it is also going to condition them towards money, and then whatever the incentive you have given, they will do only that, and to do a little more things you have to give more incentives. So that means every behavior need to be incentivized. So you may also condition them towards those things. It happens with the children. So you give say that do your homework, that I will give you one chocolate. Okay. So the next is, okay, now then it gets into a kind of a bargaining thing. Okay, today I will not do. So then you insist, no, you shall do, but then the kid will say, no, you give me 2 chocolates, then only I will do. So the implications of that, you have solved a problem at the first time by providing the chocolate and made that kid to do the homework, but in the next time that you have to do 2 or 3 to get to the same kind of behaviors. But probably you have not analyzed another dimension is whether how the kid perceives this, the homework itself, or how the homework enables the performance of the student in the real work. In the real work, in the sense, at the time of examination or the classroom performance and things like that. So the point is that one need to evaluate the implications of the solution. So, these implications may even be significant enough to render a proposal unworkable. So, that means by spending that kind of a time, by seeing this analysis, you may also say, I think this is not going to work. I think the implication may take this thought that the solutions whatever has been identified may not work at all. So, people say it is a reality check. So, assuming that you have identified the problem, generated the alternatives, and then followed with the best of the solution what could be done, also you get into the implementation. So, once a problem has been defined, the best solution identified, now you are seeing about the implementation, also thought about. It is always possible to produce a plan for implementing the solution. Sometimes you may go in an incremental way, sometimes you may do, okay, we will solve only this part of the problem and then we can do the kind of a rollout in other groups or in other places, in other departments. So, that means an implementation can be done in an incremental way, sometimes organization as a whole, or sometimes in one go, or in sometimes in through a continuous cyclical fashion. So, what is important is a workable plan is required to demonstrate that solution is indeed feasible. So, that is how we talk about some demonstrations in terms of the whether the solution methodology will work or not. Sometimes you want a prototype, sometimes you want a proof of the concept, and sometimes it is desirable to show that it works in one situation and also it is possible to implement in other situations through appropriate extrapolations. So, the problem solving this, if you see, once a problem has been defined and also the best solution identified, the implications are also thought about, then you have to see then it could be then used to the managing the work. So, the implementing solution to a problem is always becomes a kind of a management issue. So, it is not good enough to throw up set of ideas, but to understand its total implication at the individual level, group level, as well as at the organizational level. Also, you have to see historically what influences of where we have done similar things and been very successful, but also look at the cost and the time implications within the which all the whatever the activities are going on, and typically it is resolving many of these issues. So, problem solving, that is how is also seen at the implementation level. It becomes basically a kind of a management problem. So, from problem solving we will also look into this the other methods to improve the ability to propose solutions to a problem. We have already talked about the quantity as an important thing. So, we will see this brainstorming as well as the lateral thinking as the kind of the proposed solutions. Brainstorming has been mentioned in different ways, but the brainstorming is a method by which a flood of new approaches to a problem can be generated. So, that means what you are trying to do is that when people sit together, you try and ask this question that what is the problem and what is that to be done about it, what has caused this situation and how can we improve the things to the future. So, the several questions whatever we posed in the past. So, in most cases the majority of ideas are discarded. So, from the generous flow only one idea may be needed to solve the problem. So, that means in a brainstorming the wastage rates does not matter really. Then you are talking about the quantity and then not really the kind of a quality as at the first stage. That means you are seeking as many ideas as possible. The technique of brainstorming relies on the kind of an assembled group seeing the problem with fresh eyes. So that means they are bringing new perspectives, new thoughts, and then the purely rational approach is used after the brainstorming session to assess the ideas. So, but in a idea generation level is that you really are not going to judge anything. It could be rational, it could be irrational, it is emotional, illogical, logical, silly, great. All of these things are acceptable at that first stage. So, the first stage is of where you are generating and welcoming as many ideas as possible from the other. So, during brainstorming phase, the most productive individuals are the ones who let go the rational constraints and then use their imagination. So, people have written books on imaginization, or the people also use this word out of the box thinking. So, you do not want a step by step solutions to a given problem, but then can you come up with highly innovative and the highly at one point of time can look impossible, irrational, but come with those thoughts. So, when people thought that for example, if you take radios, so at one point of time people thought radio as a kind of a dead and gone as the complete technology, but then suddenly the people made it, because as that FM came and people are able to get that kind of a quality listening. So, suddenly there is a kind of a new thoughts and new ideas. It gave a kind of a competition to the TVs, and similarly the print media went through the same thing. When people talked about internet, people talk about World Wide Web and the digitization, and people clearly assume that the days of the library and everything gone. But the print media came up with much more attractive propositions. So, in other words, the creativity and the brainstorming go together, and the brainstorming demands that kind of a thinking of out of the box, creating that kind of a newer solutions, and then providing that kind of a business opportunity. So, in a brainstorming session, in this people are asked to think in as many ways as possible, in as many different ways as possible, and also from different perspectives. Take the role of the customer, take the role of the banker, take the role of the manager, take the role of the user, take the role of any implementer. So, the people do take different roles and then think about it, and that is where the much of the things is in the minds of the people. A free mind, a free flowing mind generates many thoughts and many ideas. So, as this brainstorming happens, so then it means what is the successful brainstorming means what? It is an environment in which a torrent of ideas flourish. So, people are not judgmental. People do not laugh because somebody has given some thought or some idea. Obviously, it may or may not work. Not every idea can be understood or can be productionized or can be implemented, but people do welcome. People do welcome all the things at one phase, but after that brainstorming phase, after collection of all the ideas, you move to the next level of problem solving and implementation as well. So, in order to enhance this kind of a creativity, and successful brainstorming session has to have 4 basic rules. One, you have to focus on quantity. So, the focus on quantity is, can you come up with more thoughts, can you give more ideas. So, you demand idea 1, idea 100, idea 150. So, it does not matter. So, get as many ideas as possible. That is on the kind of a quantity. So, ask questions why, how, what can be done. So, what are the alternatives available, if not, so what. So, in different ways the thoughts can be generated, the quantity can be demanded. But also with this, criticism is highly forbidden. So, that means members, the team members cannot talk about or cannot reject the ideas at the at the idea generation level, and also very clearly you have to state that unusual ideas are welcome. So it does not mean as long as you think it is something relevant, come up with some more thoughts, some more ideas, and you also combine and improve the ideas. So that means you can build on the thoughts of the other, build on try and give that kind of a changes. The simplest of the thought could be is that a small gem clip, how a gem clip can be used. So the group has come up with as many ideas as possible in an example of a brainstorming session. So people thought about it. It can be used as a paperweight. It can be used as making a chain. It could be to many things. So it starts with 2 ideas, 3 ideas initially, then 10, then 20, then 50. A simple thing, then people start seeing it is you can use it for over 150 different ways. So that means when people start seeing, that helps them to look at opportunities, and whenever the problem comes, that helps them to see the problem in different shades and also come up with great thoughts and also great ideas. So having these principles are extremely important, and also the various things can be done to foster the good brainstorming conditions. Ideal is that have a leader experienced in brainstorming. So that means he is able to provoke, he is able to demand, he is able to show some of the examples of how one can go about or how one can do it. So having that kind of a facilitator, using that kind of a medias where ideas can be put together, and then one can start structuring around those things. And also the important thing is the group size. You must have a group of less than about 10 people, and certainly you should have more than 3 people. I think that's the ideal group size. As we have seen already, more than 10 could mean that a kind of a noise, rejection of some of the ideas, repetition of the thoughts, and people just rejecting the other based on the kind of a clicks what they have or belongingness. So the kinds of issues of that nature. The other side is that when you have less than 3, the point is that you may not get enough thoughts. So people are not in a position to build on each other's thoughts or combine and come up with newer solutions. So the idea of brainstorming is to put together that kind of a required number, create an undisturbed kind of a situation, and people focus on the problem and generate as many possible solutions to the problem without having any inhibitions, without having any judgmental kind of a climate, and through that process they do what is known as an out of the box thinking, come up with extremely new solutions. Many organizations have found it very useful. So sometimes it is also desirable to include people who have little or no technical knowledge of the problem, and particularly sometimes the kids are very useful, sometimes the young minds are very useful, sometimes it is desirable to have people from different background and different fields, because they may see what people call it as upside down. So when they change the problem from a different perspective and come up with alternate paradigms, and definitely don't permit any negative comments. The group has to have that kind of a acceptance. The group should welcome the thoughts, but not necessarily that every thought should work towards getting into the solution mode. So as you have seen, the brainstorming becomes a very fundamental thing of the innovation creativity process. Don't allow suggestions of solutions or evaluation of ideas when the ideas are being generated. So that means you have to clearly separate this out, idea generation to the next level of idea processing. So you must encourage positive statements where people build on each other, contribute to with newer thoughts and newer insights. So once that is done, you see a group atmosphere that puts everyone on the same level. So that means what happens is in some organization boss is present, then people are very careful in telling, because they may think somebody or boss may think it as silly, or boss may come and ask who asked you to suggest such things. So people tend to be inhibited by having more senior members around. So that means you must create that kind of a feeling amongst the group members that all are equal, all are colleagues, and that collegiality is an important dimension of participation. So keep the session short, about half an hour, because too much of a time could lead to a repetitive, very boring, and it could have that effect of demotivation. So you record the ideas in sufficient detail to allow the examination later. So that means don't write only telegraphically, but some more thoughts, if they are expressed, indicate and include those things as well, so that those things can be elaborated for its relevance, its practicality, or its implication towards the implementation as well. After the idea generation phase, more technically qualified people can sit together, consider all the suggestions and also implication of the ideas. And now one can be very critical, one can be very judgmental, one can have a systematic ways of seeing these ideas through different filters. And now you can accept or throw out. So now beyond the quantity, you are seeing now its relevance, its implication, its use and things like that. So the now emerging ideas may have come from different directions, possible. So what is important is not from where the idea has come, but what those ideas would mean in order to understand and solve the problem. So that is where that irrespective of the origin of the thoughts, irrespective of who has given the idea, the process must be created, the criterion must be set to evaluate each of the collected ideas. So brainstorming as a process, if you see, it is particularly useful when an impasse has been reached. That means the people have already put their thoughts and have come to that kind of a conclusion, and the physical principle used in an attempt to solve the problem has been found to be unsatisfactory. So that means the existing methodologies have been used and has been worked out, and then it is now you have to go beyond that. So then that's the time where people can sit together and then see how to see the problem from different views and different perspectives. Brainstorming tends to throw up rather wild ideas, and many of which are interesting, amusing, or sometimes of little practical value. So that it says, yeah, you can laugh at it, you may feel you may feel also great about it, but the point is, in lot of quantity also comes with lot of junk. So this makes the use of the thoughts as very limited. So sometimes you see, having gone through a brainstorming session, not enough could be achieved, or all the ideas are mostly useless, and it may not meet the expectations also. So this technique is only applicable when you think in terms of on an infrequent basis. So sometimes results can be spectacular when it is used appropriately. So brainstorming can be used as a supplement for many things, for particularly the individual ideation. That means by means of generating maximum number of potentially usable ideas in a minimum amount of time. So it can trigger that required individual thoughts, where in the short period of time you are able to provide those intense thoughts. Creative training, the brainstorming improves that creative attitude. That means always you can improve upon, you can identify the problem and look at it. So the solving abilities, so it improves the creative ability in groups as well as individuals. It can also be used in a business conference where set of people are together. So it stimulates creative thinking in a very judicious and relatively unproductive atmosphere. So it provides that kind of a thought where people can do a little bit of out of the box thinking. The brainstorming applications have been found very useful in new product development, obtaining ideas for new products, or making improvements to existing products. It is also has been found to be very useful in advertising, in developing the ideas for advertising campaigns, and then come up with some newer thoughts about how to improve upon whatever done in the past. So the problem solving issues and get into the root causes and generating alternate solutions, also finding that kind of making an impact analysis and the evaluation. And also it has been found very useful in process management, finding ways of improving business, as particularly the production processes, where the relevant people can come together, discuss and come up with set of alternatives. Brainstorming has also been put to use in project management. So identifying the client's objectives, the kind of risk associated with, about the deliverables, about the work packages, also think about the resource commitments, identification of the roles and responsibilities, the task allocations, and also the issues regarding the implementation. So brainstorming has been found to be pretty useful. Also in team building, it generates the sharing and then a discussion of ideas while stimulating participants to think. So where people struggle, people stretch, and such challenges also make them to be a part of that enjoyment process. So it is used in business planning, where you develop and lots of scenarios and improve the product ideas and also how to approach the marketplace. Helps in developing appropriate business models and business plans and evaluating the alternatives. So there are not only these kinds of direct applications, many people also have talked about the indirect results of a brainstorming session. So the main purpose of brainstorming is to generate ideas to solve a problem, but however a group brainstorming session also has more value than just mere solving the problem. For example, you look into that, it improves initiative because people are given a chance to speak, people are asked to contribute, participants are encouraged, so to consistently throw their ideas, to take initiatives at all the time. So this initiative can last even after the session, so that people get that yes, they have been an important part of this whole process. It also improves their creative thinking, and they have to do, as I mentioned earlier, encouraged to look from a creative perspective, means out of the box thinking about the problem and how you can solve it. It helps them to see all the time improved ideas. The participants get more experience with creative thinking, and they can use it even after the exercise is over. So then they can always think about applying these things in different situations, different context. It also improves the morale, where they feel as a part of the group and part of the organization, and the participants work together as a team to find solutions to a problem, and everyone participates. That also builds that overall the group feeling or the we feeling. It improves that morale and the team spirit. It also builds that kind of an enjoyment when they see a problem and solve that problem. It builds that kind of an excitement and the fun in the workplace, makes the atmosphere much more for joint problem solving and working together. So apart from this, we also could think of the lateral thinking. The lateral thinking mentioned by Edward de Bono is where he came up with. There is a psychologist, is a physician and a writer. So he defines as a kind of a technique of problem solving by approaching problems indirectly at diverse angles instead of concentrating on one approach at length. So you have to wear different hats and examine the problem from different perspectives. So it is the opposite of what people talk about the vertical thinking. So one starts with some known conditions, applies steps of reasoning aimed at reaching a goal in the vertical thinking, but in a lateral thinking you move from one to the other. So your end result could be the kind of an input to come up with an appropriate problem definition. So in lateral thinking, when it is not constrained to follow completely the formal deduction process, one can also have an inspiration or a flash and see new angles to the problem by going through different experience and bringing about different insights to the problem. So that is how the lateral thinking is used as a kind of to free us from all the limitations, sometimes our own blocks and thoughts. So lateral thinking has been seen as a kind of the brainstorming one's own, and the lateral thinkers, they get into new ideas and views suddenly, and it could be very creative as well as very imaginative. One can attempt this to go through in a systematic fashion. Other important thing very widely used is the literature review. Literature review is a study of what others have written about the problem, and then you also think about the related problems, and then you think maybe there is already a kind of a solution. So systematically analyzing what has been published already and then getting into various dimensions also help for the systematic thinking, solving the problem in a more creative way, more innovative way. So far what we have done is, in this session we have seen the following in detail: the problem solving in terms of examination, proposal, implications and implementation, brainstorming, lateral thinking, and also the literature review. In our next session we will focus on the another important dimension of organizational functioning. We will take a close look at the concept and definition of stress and the nature of stress and different stages of the stress and what are the symptoms of stress and what needs to be done.